Heading to our next story, it's an interesting story. Of course, it's developed over the last week or so. Just to lay out a little bit of the context for you, it's the feud between Ben Shapiro, who is a pro-Israel conservative commentator and Daily Wire co-founder. The feud is between Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes, who is a far-right white nationalist and also a Holocaust denier. The spark has really come, especially, Nick Fuentes has been a little bit, he's not a mainstream guy, but he has a very huge following within the conservative movement, especially for young conservative men. And now, most recently, especially with the loss of Charlie Kirk, there's been a void there for the young men to follow in the conservative movement. So, many people gravitating towards Nick Fuentes. Now, Fuentes is way more controversial than, if people say Charlie Kirk was.
They thought he was controversial.
Yes, they thought Charlie Kirk was bad.
Sit in a Nick Fuentes lobby.
If they thought Charlie Kirk was bad, introducing Nick Fuentes. He is 100 times worse than Charlie Kirk, and he's definitely put a name out for himself, especially since September 10th. He's definitely trying to fill that void for the conservative youth and especially young men. Now, he was actually just recently put on the Tucker Carlson show. And if you're on the Tucker Carlson show, of course, with him, the big name that he's had, people start to see that. Now, Mr. Fuentes starting to become more of a mainstream conservative on media. However, he's banned and censored on almost every platform. However, his views is being reposted. It's not even him posting on these platforms. It's people taking clips from his podcasts and his shows, and they're re-uploading on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on TikTok. This is not Nick Fuentes' doing. This is his army, that you would call it. His army is helping him get his message out there and almost hyping him up with the edits that you see. It makes him almost look like a badass dude, that he is a defender, he's a fighter, and the reels that you see are just undeniable. So it's really an interesting battle that we're seeing right now between the old guard with Ben Shapiro and now a new up-and-coming riser of Nick Fuentes, and he has the momentum behind him. So and just to touch on, what we're seeing is what's called the MAGA Civil War. We have, of course, MAGA, the Make America Great Again movement, and Nick Fuentes' movement, which he's calling the America First movement. And there's a lot of people behind him in his corner in the America First movement. So let's jump to whoever would like to take this first and talk about the MAGA Civil War.
I think one thing to really point out, I listened to the entire Tucker and Nick interview, and one thing, honestly, the most impressive thing about it is that on Tucker's show, on his podcast, his interview with Nick is the fourth highest. It has the fourth highest amount of views of all of his shows. The only ones that are ahead is a video about the CIA secret 9/11 files, an interview with the president of El Salvador, and an interview with Vladimir Putin. And then everybody else he's interviewed is all behind Nick Fuentes. So that shows like this is no longer, he's no longer underground. He's got his movement, he's got the motion. It's all there for him. And I mean, really what he's dominating in right now is the short form content. Everyone that's clipping him, like that's where he's getting, because they clip the controversial stuff, the funny stuff, the best moments, and it really resonates with the dark humor of young men or even young women. And in reality, young people run social media, and Nick Fuentes speaks to the young populace. Ben Shapiro's
he's out of touch. He's old.
He's past his prime. He's great possibly for people, an older audience, but when you have a guy like Nick Fuentes who resonates with the maybe a little bit of immaturity, maybe a little bit of jokes, but also ties in a lot of actual knowledge. It's not just all filth. If you ever look at some of the things he says, he makes connections, and he does a good job of what he wants to do while while having fun with it. So, I mean, is he an interesting guy? Is he controversial? Yeah, but I mean, he's good at what he does. I'll give him credit where credit's due. He's good at what he does.
And he's very smart.
He is
You know,
smart.
and
Yeah.
you can say that about someone. I don't like him. I'm not a fan. I don't care for him at all. I think he's actually, I would say, a cancer to the conservative movement. I would go there and say that. However, he is a very smart individual. He really is. I do have to give him that. Now, that video that's up on Tucker Carlson, when it was released 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And how many views did it get?
6.4 million
6.
as of today. And I think
that's not counting Twitter, because it's
Yeah,
on Twitter.
it's all
It's on
over
Twitter
that.
fully posted. I think it's on Rumble fully posted.
Everywhere. And that's just on YouTube. 6.4 million. That's
6.4 million.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's astounding. That has finally cemented Nick Fuentes into the mainstream conservative movement, which again, with his following, is just unbelievable. It really is. It's unbelievable.
I think one of the most important things to look at when we're talking about social media, I mean, you have accounts like Groiper Girly, which is like a bull, but it's this young woman who posts Nick Fuentes edits, and it's like, oh, well, you're finally Nick's husband, and it's like a bunch of different little pictures, and it's like, or things where it's like super chats he does, or it's like you see a clip of him. What was the clip? It was a clip of him with like a pumpkin he painted, or a clip of him with like a ghost, or like a clip of him making a joke. Like there's literally a clip of him yelling about Matt Walsh and telling him to get back to work. I mean, like the guy puts out funny stuff. He knows how to work an audience, and it's no shock to me that young men would gravitate towards him, especially Catholic men, when he tells people, you know, like read your Bible, go to church, whatever, do this, this, and this. It's not hard to see why people would come towards him. And his brutal honesty about a lot of topics. You know, he's also said before the broken clock is right, you know, twice a day. And it's hard to ignore Nick when he keeps being right about certain situations.
That is the one thing is, you know, us as a populace are so used to, like, you know, the Fox News, or, you know, any news media outlet that's just honestly filled with a lot of people who are just there to fulfill a certain agenda. And then when you have someone like Nick come on, who's completely authentic, you know, he doesn't necessarily hide any of his opinions.
Right.
You know, people gravitate towards that because there's a lack of that in the political space, you know. I really don't feel like there's many mainstream people that are entirely authentic, you know, and I think that's what the young people want. So, I mean, and he's charismatic, you know, he's like Tucker. Tucker's charismatic. So, I mean,
Him and Tucker coming together was probably like the worst thing that could happen, because everyone loves Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have people who love Nick. And, you know, I see some similarities between Nick and Tucker when they talk and, you know, how they present things.
Right.
But, like, we're going to go see Tucker at the Turning Point event in December. And I'm really interested if he's going to talk about it and if he's going to bring it up. And I know there's going to be that question panel. And I don't know, maybe he'll bring Nick out to AmFest.
Oh.
no.
He
He's
might.
banned. He's
They
banned.
Nick will not
might.
be
They
Nick is
might.
banned.
He will
They
not.
might reverse it.
He will
Do
not.
you think
be
they'd
there.
reverse it?
I think they might reverse it.
Let's go back to November 2018, the first Red Clash at Turning Point USA event for Fuentes. Fuentes disrupts the Turning Point USA campus event hosted by Charlie Kirk, heckling him with questions like, how does it feel to be a shill for Israel? Of course, Shapiro, being a Turning Point USA supporter and vocal Israel advocate, publicly denounces Fuentes as hideous, ugly, disgusting, morally reprehensible, and logically idiotic.
He just threw everything.
Right? Accusing him of anti-Semitism and launching a deplatforming campaign to derail his career. So again, I don't think
he
But
will not
Ben
be there.
Shapiro, so they've had like a long-standing beef since
right.
Nick went to the Daily Wire and he started asking questions about,
Right.
hey, why are we blindly following Israel? Why do we support Israel so much? Why is Israel like one of the main things we care about here? And then they said, bye, you're gone,
Right.
leave, after taking him out of Boston College. Which, if you know anything about Nick, his whole career has been him being deplatformed, which kind of is it's a little interesting to watch someone be deplatformed so much. And you have other like examples of this. Like you have people who do way worse things. You still have child predators on YouTube, but you have Nick Fuentes, who's a man just speaking, and he's getting deplatformed every chance he gets.
That's my big thing. Of course, I don't agree with Fuentes on a number of issues. However, I don't think he should be deplatformed. I don't think he should be banned on these social media organizations. He should be allowed to post and say what he wants to say. That is, of course, up for public consumption. At that point, people want to listen to it. That's the freedom of speech, right? Is to be, of course, you can't say, you want to, we all know the no.
Well, there's
things.
There's things you can say to incriminate
We all know the
yourself,
things
right?
you can't say with the First Amendment right, but he has the freedom of speech and he has the right to go out there and record himself and say what he wants to say. However, for him to be deplatformed, I think that's just totally wrong. It is. I think anyone, even if it's someone on the other side of the aisle, the most extreme people over there, they should be allowed to say whatever they want to say. However, of course, we know that saying is that doesn't come with freedom from consequences. Right. If you are, at work or you're with an organization, now you say something that badly reflects your work or organization, now, of course, they have the right to do whatever they'd like to do with you. However, when you put something out on the internet, I think it needs to be free. However, even if it's with a media organization or social media platform, if it's on the internet, I think it should be allowed to be out there. Of course, from extreme things that we see, like violence, that shouldn't be allowed on there. But if someone's just sitting there talking about their values and their beliefs, it should be out there. It shouldn't be banned.
Can we talk about Trump's response to the Tucker interview?
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was super interesting. And you know what? I agree with Trump on that. I think, this is a good, authentic opinion from Trump saying, hey, freedom of speech should be allowed. Tucker's a great guy. He should be able to have whoever he wants to have. I'm glad he's defending our First Amendment rights. And I feel like if he didn't do that and said, no, Tucker shouldn't have, person X, Y, and Z on the show, for any sort of speech reason, that would be pretty harmful in terms of how we look at our First Amendment rights. So from my perspective, I think Trump's response to that was good in the sense of, protecting free speech.
I'm absolutely in agreement with the president on that. He was right. He nailed it. One thing I'd like to touch on, though, especially with the dinner back in 2022 with Nick Fuentes and Trump. However, I would like to say the context behind this dinner. Trump had this dinner, and he invited Kanye West, or Ye, to go to this dinner. And Ye brought a guest with him by the name of Nick Fuentes. Now, Trump says that he did not know Fuentes was coming or really who he was. I'm sure Ye said, hey, can I bring a friend? Nick Fuentes, and Trump's like, yeah, sure, whatever, bring a friend.
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if Trump really believed that because again, in 2022, Fuentes was uploading videos and he was still doing what he was doing, but he was not at all even close to the national recognition that he has right now. He was, people knew him, especially if you were in the media for conservatives deep down. Like if you were digging in, you knew who Nick Fuentes was, but no one at all knew. If you didn't pay attention at all, really, you had no idea who he was. So he was a no-name person back in 2022, but that dinner with Trump and Ye and having Nick Fuentes there, that's been in the spotlight a little bit, especially with this interview and Nick Fuentes' rise to stardom now. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that was really, a critical point in Fuentes' career because one thing I like to do, and this is just a personal thing, it might be a little bit weird, but I like to look at how the relevancy of people changes over time. And there's a website called Google Trends where you can see how not even just people, but different things. You can see the rise in popularity of things and then the decline. So one thing I wanted to see is, when did Fuentes really start to grow? Was it just recently? Was it a couple years ago? But his first initial huge spike was when everyone was reporting about him going to Mar-a-Lago. So if anything, he just got good publicity, or at least publicity in general. So it definitely helped him out. And it's just cool to meet the president anyways.
Right.
And to be with Ye.
Right.
Well,
Well, maybe like
Maybe.
2005, yay. Like
2005,
pre everything, yay. But
Everything, yeah.
But my whole thing was, I mean, Nick Fuentes has been around for a while. I mean, I see my Democrat friends, which might hot take, I have some, but I see them
We
liking.
all do.
Yeah, we do.
I see them liking Nick Fuentes reels,
I see that too.
and I'm
I
like,
see that
oh
too.
my gosh,
You know, I have a
there's
friend back
no
home
way.
who is, and this is literally my best friend. Also, I think it's stupid if, you know, you would decide not to have a friend based on a political side. But he sends me Nick Fuentes reels. And he is like, his whole family is pretty liberal. He himself is pretty liberal. But he's been sending me the Nick Fuentes.
I mean, one of the
which
most
is really crazy.
liberal people I know. I look down on Instagram and I see liked by blank. I'm like,
Right.
this isn't you.
Yeah, it's like, this isn't you.
This
Like,
isn't
what's going on
Right.
here?
Maybe you're
Like I
is.
check in, I'm like holding
You know,
their hand.
if
like,
anything,
are you okay?
honestly, what it seems like Nick is doing is like almost uniting in a way the two sides, which well probably not, but on some issues.
Like
Right.
you see
know?
Hassan Piker
Mhm.
and Nick Fuentes sometimes giving the same take about
Right,
Israel,
yeah.
and you're sitting there and you're going, "Oh my gosh!"
That's where the bridge is. Where
Yeah,
the connecting
that's
is
where
between
the bridge
Fuentes and I would say people on the left is because you again have many people on the left, and then you have Fuentes who is anti-Israel. He is totally against them, and I would see. I have a weird. And it's not even weird, but for them it would be. But I am pro-Israel. I really am, and I know for some people, especially in the America First movement, I think we need to back the Jewish state in the Middle East, and we need to back the ally that we have over there. I just think that it's way better to have the Jewish state of Israel there than a Hamas and Gaza. I think that's very scary to have over there. And I'm very afraid and very sad for the Jewish people over there. And I think we need to trust them. We need to have their back. Seriously, that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm totally against it. But that's where the left agrees with Fuentes, is because they are the pro-Hamas.
Right.
And they are the pro-Palestine people, and they're, we had the college campuses protest, last year, and they were saying, to the river, to the sea, and they wanted Palestine, and I just think that's just totally outrageous because you're supporting a terrorist organization if you want Palestine, so that's just very insane to me, but again, that's where the bridge is between the two, and going back to what the what the liberal people might like on social media is it comes down to maybe almost the hype videos, because again, the hype videos and edits that people create
The edits
Fuentes,
are crazy.
they're good. I will say they're good.
I think
they're like, wow.
my favorite one was this video, and it's like, I just thought it was funny, but it's like Christmas pictures. It's like a Christmas tree, and then you look at the TV in the corner, and it's Nick's stream up there. Like
Right.
it's everywhere. You can't avoid it.
No.
My Instagram feed, I like my little cat videos, and somehow there's a Nick Fuentes
Right.
video popping up. And sometimes it's like the Get Back to Work Matt Walsh clip, or it's the
Right.
I'm just a baby. Nick, I do know who that is.
Just one thing. I mean, this has just been an interesting situation, especially because as we tie it all together, this is what's being labeled as the MAGA Civil War. Again, with MAGA versus Nick Fuentes' movement, America First. Do we ever see this? We've had a little clash here, but do we ever see this coming at a crossroads at some point?
I don't think so. The way I look at it is, we can disagree on some issues, and the issue of Israel and foreign policy, I'd say that's a pretty key issue. But do I think that's going to cause a vast majority of a particular group, whether it be the more MAGA side or the America First side? Do I think that's going to sway a large enough population of the vote so that conservatives would end up losing and it would start destroying the Republican Party? I don't think so. I think you're going to have guys that are going to be America First and be conservative and vote Republican, and you're going to have MAGA who's going to be pro-Trump and vote Republican.
Right.
So it's like, are we still on the same side voting wise, yeah. And that's really all that matters, is the votes at the end of the day. Who the person that's running for, whatever position, whatever the ticket is, does that matter? Probably not as much. And I do think that there would be some people perhaps that, maybe they would feel so strongly about a certain issue that it would cause them to flip. But would it be a majority enough to destroy the Republican Party? I don't think so.
I have a hot take, and you will not hear this anywhere, but there is an America First member of Congress.
There is.
Any guess?
Yeah.
Any guess of
Thomas
who
Massie?
I'm thinking? No, he went in line with that.
No?
And because of who he is, morally and his values.
There,
he's
I
kind of
saw there was a clip. I saw
Yeah.
that post today.
He
that-
wouldn't back Nick Fuentes. No one would back him, but they also, even if you hand him the ideas of Nick Fuentes, Massey wouldn't agree.
Right.
There's someone else I'm thinking of. And
I saw that post.
They've changed the last month. They were huge on MAGA, but then this gives it away, she had a clash with President Trump over the Epstein files.
Was it Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
She is the first, in my opinion, member of Congress who is part of the America First movement.
Yeah.
You think about it and where she's moved. Of course, her being at odds with President Trump and Trump calling her a traitor. Of course, obviously, she's not MAGA no more. But she really fits the mold of what a member of Congress and the America First movement would be. There was another one, too. He's no longer in Congress, but it would be Matt Gaetz. He's another America First type member of Congress.
Yeah.
He's not there anymore, but again, Marjorie Taylor Greene has become the first America First.
And you have Laura
member of
Loomer
Congress.
moving
Yes.
over to Super
Yes.
MAGA.
Mhm.
I think it's interesting. Isn't Marjorie Taylor Greene pushing for a lot of the release of the Epstein files as well?
She's been
Yeah.
huge. She's been huge.
So it's kind of interesting to see. It was a little unexpected, but there's also a post right now. I don't know who it is because it didn't say. But someone's been watching Nick Fuentes in the White House.
Oh, I'm sure there is. There's a lot of people in the White House. I'm sure someone's in there watching.
Yeah. But I just think it's interesting because you see this shift, and I honestly have to disagree with you, Nick. We have 3 years left. This is going to destroy the Republican Party.
You really think so? On a
voter basis, yes. You had Hassan Piker coming out and telling his viewers to not vote for Kamala Harris when we had a huge blue wave happen about a year ago, right? And I was even sure that Kamala was going to win. I didn't think that Trump was going to get reelected, to be honest. I mean, that was just my personal opinion. I was like, I don't know, what I've seen in the media, what I've seen people liking, how many people that I know in general saying they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. I think she'll probably win. But you had Hassan Piker, you had a lot of these leftists coming out and saying, we're not voting for Kamala Harris, we're not voting. And guess what? They didn't have the turnout that they usually have. And I think that's really interesting.
All over because of Palestine. That was why.
Yeah.
That was why they lost that.
So I
that
think
issue.
you will truly see a divide within the Republican Party,
Mhm.
and you're going to get a few options, and you're going to see people be like, well, we're not going to vote if you're pro-Israel. We're not going to vote if you're not America First. So I think it's actually going to take a huge portion of the Republican voter base.
Yeah, and I'll say, losing Charlie Kirk really hurt. It really hurt because when I think about him as an individual, he held a lot of those ideas that I, think were for a MAGA type movement, but also it was more, geared towards young conservatives.
Yeah.
He had the
That was
MAGA
the best thing
idea,
about it.
and it was.
Yeah.
It was the best thing about it. And just to kind of, since we're on the talk about Charlie Kirk, I want to ask the both of you, and whoever would like to take it first, what has the assassination of Charlie Kirk and what's been the momentum and movement for Turning Point chapters across this country? How's that been for you? What happened when, what were you doing when he was assassinated, and
I remember
what's
this.
been
I remember this.
and what's been kind of your personal reflection since then?
Well, I was in a chemistry lab when I found out about Charlie Kirk, and it was crazy that I saw it on my phone. You texted it in the College Republicans group chat and said it. That's how I found out. And well, it was somebody.
Right.
It was probably you, but somebody. And I looked at my phone, and whoever's around me, I just said, Charlie Kirk just got shot. And I kid you not, the first thing that was uttered was a kid laughed. So I thought that was pretty insensitive, but that's just people's mental states in this country.
That was sad, wasn't it? Just people
No,
being
that-
happy.
that-
It was kind of disgusting. I mean,
So
like,
disgusting.
it was. I mean, I didn't watch him personally. He wasn't for me. I'll be honest. Like, I wasn't, like, the biggest fan of him, but, like, I liked the videos he would post with his kids. I thought they were cute.
Yeah,
I thought they were
right.
cute little videos. I saw a few clips of him. I saw a video of him apologizing to a deaf person for saying that they should get rid of closed captions on emergency services. So I think,
Right.
I saw some clips of him. Wasn't the biggest fan, but, it made me really upset. Only because I don't think that anyone deserves to be assassinated or taken out for their beliefs. I think it moves our country backwards so much, and we've seen this over time with multiple other people.
Right.
And it's concerning. It's disgusting that there was not enough security, there wasn't a heavy police presence. And then you also had people like that, what was his name, George Zim, who allowed the police to think it was him so he could get arrested, allowing the other guy to flee. And you know what came out about that guy? He was a child predator with loads of child porn on his phone. So like you have people like that defending people who get assassinated. And then you also have people who just lack empathy completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just for you to finish, like, what's been your personal reflection since then?
Well, I mean, I remember after that happened, I've always wanted to do something social media based, something where I just get to talk, but not just project what I think, and more like there's a large population in the world, and there's a large population in the world, but there's a lot of people in the world who might feel lost, there's a lot of negative thoughts in the world, and if anything, I just want to use my voice to help people out. And so I decided, I wanted to start some sort of show, it was probably going to be a little bit political, but also personal, talk about personal faith beliefs. And I remember that's when I talked to you about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were like, hey, I got this idea to do a conservative media organization called Right Side Talks, and here we are.
Here we are.
So, I mean, I think it lit a fire in a lot of people. Certainly lit a fire in me, but not in a revenge sense. More of like, we're going to fight the good fight on this. And even if it means, our lives being put in danger, we honestly need to make sure we keep on talking, because as Charlie Kirk said, when people stop talking, that's when violence ensues. So, we definitely need to keep having open discussions, open debates. We can't be too one-sided and think that we're so much more righteous than the other side, because that's just gonna lead us to only be trying to prove our points instead of, having open debates and building genuine relationships with all people. Because at the end of the day, we are all human. This isn't like we shouldn't be. We're all Americans too. So yeah, we can disagree certainly, but that doesn't mean that we should be killing or be, thinking we should eradicate a whole population of society. So it definitely, I was never saddened that much over the death of someone I didn't know. I think it's because of, the weight that Charlie carried in our society, and, the way I personally think, and this is, not everybody agrees on this, but I think that he was probably, above 90% of the time always trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody's perfect, and, when you're at his status, maybe you succumb to a little bit of the elitism in some ways. I'm not saying he did, but I think for the majority of the time and for the majority of his intentions, I think he was trying to do the right thing.
You're absolutely so right. And, I actually had the opportunity to go and see Charlie Kirk down at the Student Action Summit and the Chapter Leadership Summit down in Tampa, Florida back in July. And, it was just so exciting to see someone, because you see him online and all that, and you listen to his talk show, but to see him in person, and he delivered a phenomenal speech, it was just so good. It really was. It was very inspirational. It was motivational. It was moving, though. It moved. It touched your spirit of who you are. It really did, and it was just something. I'm like, it really touched me personally. It really did. Just to be there. I was 3 rows away. I was right there from the stage. It was just such an elegant speech. It really was. There's nothing else like it. It was the best thing I ever heard. And and I would say that even before he was taken from us too soon, he did such a great job. And he was a good man. He was a good man who led his life through faith, and he brought people together, especially in our movement. He brought young people, especially there was a lot of young people in our generation through COVID who seemed to lose themselves. They couldn't figure out who they are, who they wanted to be, and Charlie Kirk was able to help lead those people to put themselves on a better track in life. He was able to tell people, this is what's going on. You don't have to look down upon yourself. You're not an evil person. Because from 2021 to 2024, if you were a straight white man, you were almost told that you're the problem with society.
Dude, we were the problem.
We were the problem.
We were the problem.
That's what they said.
I mean,
And there were so many things wrong with us. However, Charlie was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You had,
right.
Of course, racism's a bad thing. But with us as young white men, we had nothing to do with with slavery and racism. Now, we do acknowledge it. It was bad. It should never happened. And we are against it. However, why should we be punished for what happened? We shouldn't be. And Charlie was a vocal speaker upon that. And he just, when I heard that he was shot, I, of course, first thing I did was turn on the news. I'm like, what? No way. Because I got the text message from someone, and I'm like, I don't believe it. There's no way. There's no possible way. I turned on the news, and it didn't hit Fox News yet, but then 30 seconds later, they went to the live report, and they were talking about it, and I was in disbelief. I was actually at home at the time because I had an online class that day, and that was it. And I was, of course, I did not make my online class because it was 20 minutes later. I couldn't. I was distraught. I was immobilized. I couldn't do nothing. All I could think about was him, his family, us for our conservative movement.
He has 2 young kids, too.
2 young kids, and it was just such a sad thing. I really, like you said, Nick, I'd never been so touched by a death of someone who I didn't know personally. He was just he meant that much to me. He meant that much to this movement, to our generation. He was special. He really was, and I'm so upset. I still think about it all the time, about how special he was to our generation, who we are as young conservatives. And to see him taken so soon, just so sad. I was glued to the TV and hoping for, I think it was the next hour, just hoping he's going to make, because they first reported that he was in critical condition. And en route to the hospital, I'm like, he's going to make it. However, we know, of course, he was never really in critical condition at all. He was killed instantly. However, it was an awful day in our history, in our nation's history. It really was. And to put his assassination, it will be remembered by us for the rest of time. It will be up there with the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. It will be up there with the assassination of President Kennedy, but especially with Martin Luther King Jr. because he was our Martin Luther King Jr. He was that for our movement.
Yeah, that's honestly a good comparison, considering MLK wasn't a politician, politically active, yes, but a politician. A member of Congress, all that. No, Charlie Kirk wasn't either.
It's the best comparison.
So.
And he was just an amazing man. Just the finish, you nailed it exactly, Nick. When you said it lit a fire in us, and we didn't want to go out there and seek revenge. We wanted to, sit down, reflect upon ourselves, and say, how can we move forward as a society? How can we become better people? Yeah. And that's when we, of course, sat down and talked, and we realized we had some similar ideas, and that is what led to this today.
It was us 3 at that launch.
It led to the birth of Right Side Talks, that's LLC, right. The first national young conservative media organization in the world, which is eventually, we have this weekly show, but it's going to be more than the show. Yeah. It's going to be bringing young conservatives from across this nation together because we can unite as one, because we're not just Democrats or Republicans in this country, we are Americans.
That's right.
That's who we are.
Yeah.
And you look at we're the United States, not the red states, not the blue states. We are the United States of America. And we all know that starting right here, we can bring people together because that's what it's all about. Seriously.
My whole thing is, why can't we all just be friends?
I agree.
Why can't we all just be friends? Why can't we all just be
really
friends?
need to
That's great.
get back to that.
I agree.
Because, I mean, like, we all disagree on certain things.
Oh, of course.
And you know me, I don't subscribe to the two-party system, so it's
Right.
like I'm kind of a
Right.
outlier. I would
Yeah.
say that you guys are, I don't know, a little bit more conservative than I am
Mhm.
about certain things. But, like, I don't know. Why can't we all be friends? I mean, we
Yeah,
agree on a
exactly.
lot of stuff, but,
Right.
like, I see a lot of party infighting currently, and it's upsetting. I mean, not everyone's going to have the same take on certain issues. I mean, I'm going to disagree with Jack some days. I'm going to disagree with Nick some days. But it's like, at the end of the day,
That's what it's all about.
does it
that-
really...
We shouldn't be killing each other.
Exactly.
We shouldn't
You
be.
know, it's
Exactly.
like that's.
And you
Yeah.
know-
I'm not punching you in the
Yeah.
face every time you say something I disagree with.
And you nailed it. That's exactly
Yeah.
what it's about. That's what our nation was founded on those principles and those values.
Yeah.
To have your free thinking ideas without
Right.
having the thought of maybe the king coming down and trying to kill you. And
Yeah.
the king and his men. We have free flowing
Yeah.
ideas.
Back then it was the guillotine. Nowadays
Right.
it's a Glock or a rifle
right,
or something.
yeah,
You know?
it's sad, but I would just like to take this time to thank both of you for for all of us just coming together to start not just this media organization, but this company now is what it is. But it's
Yeah.
a movement.
Yeah.
It's a movement, is what it is. This is the Right Side Talks movement, and I would just like to thank every single one of you for watching this episode and supporting us. We really do appreciate it. We really do, and we hope that you continue to watch our episodes and our videos that we're going to put out every single week. Especially even if we're on break, we're still going to make it happen for you. And again, this has just been an ultimate blessing to be here today on this Friday evening and get this done. So thank you. We appreciate it. God bless.